Hello, everybody. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. That is me. Thank you for joining me today, giving me just a little slice of your day. You know that I appreciate you. A lot to get into today. A lot. SEC Media Days 2016 continues. I wish I was there. Instead, I'm here, which is fine. But I have to get all the secondhand information and parlay that onto you. But here's the thing: so many interesting things are happening, and so many interesting questions continue to be raised at SEC Media Days that it almost doesn't matter. Right? We had an interesting confrontation between Paul Feinbaum and Nick Saban that I thought brought up some interesting questions. Yesterday, Dan Mullen opening his mouth to say things also opened up some interesting questions. And quite frankly, these two things are somewhat related. So we'll get into that. We'll have to cover the British Open starting tomorrow at Royal Troon in the UK. Who's going to win the tournament? I have no idea, but I have some guesses. And Draymond Green continuing to do Draymond Green things, even though there is no basketball court to do Draymond Green things on. So we will get into all of those things, but first, let me tell you about where you can find us and hopefully where we could find you. I highly recommend our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Go check those out. If you don't want to search Hot News Talk Radio in the search bar, you lazy bum, you can go to our website, hotnewstalkradio.com, and find all of our social media links. You can also stream us live on the internet at hotnewstalkradio.com or on Facebook. Click on the little radio plug-in at the bottom left corner of the page, and you can have Hot News Talk Radio there. Or you can go to the TuneIn Radio app, which is absolutely free in your favorite app store. Simply search TuneIn Radio and search Hot News Talk Radio in the app. Give us a favorite and press play. You'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go for your help in covering the local news, as well as extra programming. We've got Sean Hannity. We've got NASCAR on the weekends. And as we get closer and closer to football season, I cannot start too soon in telling you that we also carry the NFL on Sundays, courtesy of Westwood One. So we have all of those things for you. Today, Kevin Durant back in the news, thanks to Commissioner Adam Silver, who basically said that Kevin Durant's move was not great from a league perspective, and that the CBA is going to need some refining, right? Just a little bit of refining on that, because these players have too much power. Well, I agree. The players do have a lot of power, but I disagree that they have too much power, and I also disagree that this move is not great from a league perspective. Really? How? It's a polarizing move. It's going to do nothing but draw attention. Like, if nothing else, it's going to draw attention because people will tune in. What do the Warriors look like now? Like, are they actually better for having Kevin Durant? How long does that meshing process take for them? All of those questions are interesting questions, and the only way you can find out is by watching those games. It's not like the Warriors weren't popular enough. The only way to get more people to watch them is to put them on TV. Also, you have a broken relationship, and we saw what happened when Shaq and Kobe ended up splitting apart, right? The Christmas games that we got for years and years and years were Shaq and Kobe. Is there any love lost between Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook? I'd love to tune in and watch that game. Make that game a Christmas game, please. That's primetime television right there. Because even when the Lakers were bad and Shaq was in Miami, that was a good game. Even when Shaq was on a team that was bad and the Lakers started to move on the upswing, that was a great game. It was a great game regardless. I think Kevin Durant versus Russell Westbrook is going to be a fantastic game. Especially because Kevin Durant was saying in an interview earlier that he's not sure if him and Russell Westbrook's relationship will ever be the same. I will say props to KD for at least talking to Russ about it. You're not just jumping ship without letting anybody know anything. That would just be Bush League. But Despite all of that, this is what makes this most interesting. Kevin Durant's not a villain. And I understand that you want the villains in the league because the villains draw attention. The villains bring eyeballs to the sport. But Kevin Durant's not a villain, which is what makes this even more interesting. Like the Golden State Warriors are like Teflon. Nothing really sticks to them. People didn't like them coming up to the end of last season. I think the cockiness and the arrogance finally caught up to them, but they lost. Like, if they had won, I think people would have turned the corner and hated the Warriors. But they didn't win. They lost. It's just that hatred that you would have needed to have carried on. Part of that comes from the winning. Like, who do these guys think they are? And then they just rub it in your face by continued victories. It's not that with the Warriors. The Warriors are really, bizarrely, a likable team. Like, they just are. Kevin Durant is a super likable player. And people weren't burning his jerseys when he left Oklahoma City the way people in Cleveland were burning LeBron's jerseys. You can't feel betrayed by Kevin Durant if you're Oklahoma City in that way, because LeBron was the hometown guy of Cleveland. LeBron grew up in Akron, just outside of Cleveland. That made LeBron James way, way, way more of a villain than Kevin Durant could ever be. And super likable Kevin Durant goes to play for the super likable Warriors. And I understand that while people might criticize the way the Warriors play and criticize what the Warriors are, I haven't heard anybody truly come out and hate them. When LeBron James went to Miami and sat on that stage and promised not one, not two, not three, not four, not five championships, and they were called the Heatles, and people had penciled them in for title after title after title before they did anything, I think that team was a villainous team. Okay, they just looked more bad guy-ish. And then LeBron James and Dwayne Wade have more of that swagger than Steph and KD do. And so I'm watching this and I'm going, no, you have a team that somehow, despite all of this, remains super likable. This only makes more money for the NBA. How is this bad from a league standpoint? It's barely bad from a fan standpoint. People just root for guys now. Like, people don't even root for teams the way that they used to. What is Kevin Durant changing? Well, Commissioner Silver mentioned him changing the balance of the league. But did he? Because the Golden State Warriors were already a top flight team. You're not changing the balance of anything. By removing himself from the Thunder, more teams get an opportunity to compete. That's one less Western Conference team you have to worry about. What balance of power did Kevin Durant really change? When you look at all the teams that did things in this offseason and spent real money and made really big moves, outside of Dwayne Wade leaving Miami, who really got worse? And did Miami even get that much worse? Who really, really got worse outside of the Thunder? What balance did he sway? He didn't make the Warriors better. This is a team that went to the NBA Finals the last two seasons and won a title 2 years ago. Okay, and here's the thing. This isn't the new CBA that's caused this to happen. There hasn't been competitive basketball at the top of the NBA, right? You have a top-heavy league. Both conferences, by the way. Let's take a look at the last 10 years. Who has represented the East and who has represented the West in the NBA Finals? Okay, let's go down for the East. The last 10 years have had Cleveland, Miami, Boston, Orlando, Boston, Cleveland, Miami. That's 4 teams. 4 teams have represented the Eastern Conference in 10 years. Where's your parity? This isn't the new CBA, and it's not different in the Western Conference. 5 teams have represented the Western Conference in the last 10 years, and that would be the Warriors, the Spurs, the Thunder, the Mavs, the Lakers, the Spurs, the Mavs. It's the same 5 teams. If you think that this new CBA and Kevin Durant have changed the way that this league works, what National Basketball Association have you been watching? Because I've been watching the one where I keep seeing the same teams over and over and over again. And we're not talking about teams even getting close. We're talking about the same 4 to 5 teams in each conference playing each other over and over and over again. And we're fine with it. What we're not fine with is who has the power to control which teams are good. We want that to be with the teams. But why? Why is that? Why are we rooting for the billionaires over the millionaires? By all virtue, the players are more like us than the owners are. To give more powers to the teams is to give more power to the owners. Is that really what we want? I mean, it is cool when guys can spend their entire career in one uniform. Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, most recently, spending their entire career in one uniform. Tim Duncan, 5 championships, 19 years, never missed the playoffs, all in San Antonio. That's awesome. But part of it was Tim Duncan chose that. Even in the years where it looked like San Antonio wasn't going to be the best team, Tim Duncan chose the Spurs. Again and again. Because over 19 years, regardless of what the CBA looked like, over 19 years, you're going to have your opportunities to go if you want to go. I mean, Paul Pierce left. Kevin Garnett left. If you want to go, you can go. That was never not an option. Now you just have an ability to leave in your prime and sign really short contracts so you can leave multiple times in your prime. And if anything, doesn't that make the league more fair? That in 2 years, if the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors experiment somehow, by some weird fluke, is just not a fit and doesn't work, in 2 years, Kevin Durant's back on the market again, and he can go anywhere he wants. He could even go back to Oklahoma City. I mean, this is the same NBA where LeBron James started in Cleveland, went to Miami, won titles in Miami, came back and won another title in Cleveland. So we're not talking about a league where the balance of power is permanent. If he's signing a long contract where he ends his career in Golden State, then yeah, we're talking about these large shifts of power that don't make any sense. But he's not. He could finish his career out by the Bay, but he might not. When you give the owners power, you're giving the owners power to lock players in, and they don't move anywhere. And you know what? If you're an organization and you don't run your team well enough to give your players a shot at a title, which isn't to say that the Thunder didn't, but if that's the kind of organization you run, you don't deserve to keep your player. And that player shouldn't be forced to play for you for longer. Okay, like I look at the team that I root for, the Wizards, and John Wall. John Wall wants to leave Washington when his contract is up. I couldn't blame him. That team is run poorly. Ernie Grunfeld is a terrible GM. Why should a guy be trapped on a horrible team because people look at it and go, it's not fair? Why? Why should he be trapped there? There's no good reason. It's not fair. He went to the Warriors. Well, yeah, if you think that Kevin Durant is kind of a punk for going to the team that beat him, I can't really argue you on that. That is a punk move, right? Like I've been talking about it with some friends, and whenever that comes up, I mean, the general consensus is, yeah, man, that's a punk move. That's the team that beat you. Go anywhere else. I get that. I'm not going to fight you on that one. But if your argument is it isn't fair, look at the Eastern Conference and the representatives for the NBA Finals in the last 10 years. It's only been 4 teams, and 7 of those teams have featured LeBron James. The NBA hasn't been fair. And it goes back further than that. You need a superstar at least to compete. You need 2 or 3 to really have a chance at a title. And the only way you can get that is free agency or the draft. And the way the current CBA works, more teams have more shots at more free agents. Yeah, even the ones that draft bad. And I don't see anything wrong about that. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. That's me. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. Make sure to check us out on YouTube. This show is streaming live right now on YouTube, and you can check out our archived episodes. We never call them old, of all our local programming. Clutch with Keon Rose, Best Shot with Russell Stroud. I've been on vacation, so I don't know if we've seen the return of the David Tulis show, but I hope we do soon because I missed that show. David Tulis is a great man, and he's got a lot of great ideas and has made a lot of really great radio shows. And you can check out all of the past episodes of the David Tulis show if you miss him the same way that I do. Forbes Most Valuable Teams list. Never, ever in the history of that list has an NFL team topped that list. Until now, the Dallas Cowboys, worth $4 billion. Number one on Forbes' Most Valuable Teams list. And despite the fact that the Cowboys haven't won a title in 20 years, nobody cares. The money being made from that team and their popularity has almost everything to do with what Jerry Jones has built down in Dallas, which is that giant stadium. I mean, that is that man building a temple to himself, basically, is Cowboy Stadium in Dallas. It's sort of a temple to football, but it's mostly a temple to Jerry Jones. Like, that's his lasting legacy, is that he built that absurdly large building for the sole purpose of viewing men throw a football. So good for him. Got a weird story here. Just jumping around a little bit. Because I've got a weird story. Draymond Green. Remember Draymond Green punched somebody. Talked about it on Monday. Was arrested for assault in Lansing, Michigan. As it turns out, that somebody was a Michigan State football player, a defensive back. And that defensive back originally decided not to press charges, but then he decided to press charges because he felt very disrespected. And he should feel very disrespected because Draymond Green slapped him in what many described as a very audible slap. And you just can't let another person open palm slap you like that without any kind of repercussions. Now, it's weird that you're going to go to court over it initially after not going to court. But fine. But Draymond Green slapped that guy. And you got to do something about that. And if you couldn't get something done at the time, which really would be the time to do that, because I'm not a fighter. I'll just come out and tell you right now, I haven't fought anybody since 6th grade. I haven't fought anybody since 6th grade. Not outside of a boxing ring. When I fought somebody, it was for sport, and it was with the intention that that person is fighting me back. I have not fought anybody in the sense that I have been angry enough to fight anybody because I am a grown man. So there's just really no need for any of that. But if there ever was a time to fight somebody, it's when somebody open palm slaps you. When another grown man slaps you, it's time to fight. Like, there's a few reasons to fight people. Most reasons are horrible, but there's a few reasons to fight people. You say something about my mom, that's a reason to fight. You have a little too much fun poking at the religion, I'm gonna fight you. And if you open palm slap me, just on the principle of the thing, I have to fight you. I have to. You've made it so that I no longer have a choice. But Draymond Green is one of those guys that he is who he is on and off the court. And I used to think that wasn't a bad thing. I actually defended Draymond Green because I was like, there's no way that he can be this guy all the time. Like, no, Draymond Green is this guy apparently all the time. The altercation started with Draymond Green initially telling the young man, do you know who I am? Which is such a horrible way to start anything. Don't do that. The do you know who I am line. If you have to ask, no. You're not as famous as you thought. If you ever have to ask, do you know who I am? You are not as famous as you thought you were. That's one. And two, to take it upon yourself to discipline this guy by slapping him. You're not his dad. I mean, you're not his dad. And speaking of being somebody's daddy, Nick Saban and Paul Feinbaum get into it, and Nick Saban does what he always does. He wins. Clutch with Keon Rose on Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. Next.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. You and I know that real men are prepared for anything. You know what I'm talking about because you're a Take Charge guy. Everyone's talking about Grimm's Tactical, featuring first responder gear, survival gear and equipment, Voodoo Tactical, Leapers. For personal protection, Grimm's Tactical features non-lethal personal protection gear, AR/AK parts, knives, canning and dehydrating equipment. If you hike and camp, Grimm's Tactical has got what you're looking for. Bags and packs. And for your side piece, concealed carry holsters. For men and women. Plus, Grimm's Tactical carries a wide variety of freeze-dried food. Wise Mountain House. Backpacker's Pantry. Grimm's Tactical, where law enforcement shops. Safari Lane. Blackhawk. 511. First responder gear at Grimm's Tactical. Grimm's Tactical, 8115 East Brainerd Road, in the shopping center next to the Walmart Marketplace. Look for the Mighty Mini U-Haul office. Grimm's Tactical is right next door. Grimm's Tactical, 8115 East Brainerd Road. Finding just the right place to live can be a daunting task. Stop your search. In Chattanooga, the place to live is Cross Creek Villas for under $1,000 and available for immediate move-in. You can enjoy this 2-bedroom split layout, over 1,000 square feet, 9-foot ceilings, an extra-large patio or balcony. And don't forget to ask about their preferred employer program. Cross Creek Villas is a gated community, offering a 24-hour fitness facility, a beautiful pool and hot tub, and Cross Creek Villas is pet-friendly. Stroll the pet park with your best friend and enjoy the free use of their business center and clubhouse. Plus, if you mention you heard this on the radio, your application fee is free. Cross Creek Villas, close to downtown off of Highway 58. Go to crosscreekchattanooga.com. That's crosscreekchattanooga.com or call 894-0446. That's 894-0446. Redefine the way you live at Cross Creek Villas. Go to crosscreekchattanooga.com or call 894-0446. Cross Creek Villas.
Expect fair skies to continue through the nighttime. Muggy overnight, lows into the lower 70s. For Thursday, another hot day. Just a slight chance of a stray afternoon storm. Highs near 95. For Friday, though, a few more scattered afternoon showers and storms move back in. Highs closer to 90. This forecast is brought to you by Walgreens. When you only have time for a quick trip, Walgreens is just around the corner with everything from baking needs to cleaning supplies. That's Walgreens at the corner of happy and healthy. And I'm 1412's Chief Meteorologist Patrick Ward.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. He's armed, he's dangerous, he's on the loose. Curtis Brown, according to the police, has exchanged gunfire with the Chattanooga police in East Chattanooga late Monday night. His name has been released now. Once on scene, officers located him and they attempted to make contact with him peacefully, but they exchanged gunfire and a foot chase ensued. He managed to escape. The two officers who fire at him are on administrative leave as is normal procedure with an officer-involved shooting. He's now facing charges of unlawful possession and possession of a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony and 2 charges of attempted murder. If you see Curtis Brown, do not attempt to make contact. Call 911 immediately. Firefighters pulled a woman out of her burning home at 5:30 a.m. today on Rubio Street. Officials say that they were called for help when a neighbor noticed that the woman's house was on fire. They got it under control, pulled her out, and rescued her. Her condition's not known at this time. Investigators are trying to find out why her house burst into flames. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Nick Saban. If you want to know who the man in the building is, Nick Saban. And when it comes to being in the media and dealing with Nick Saban, which I have not done personally, but from what I understand, is a trip. Nick Saban wants you to know your place. And he does not take back talk very well. Especially from lesser reporters, but I mean, even from apparently Paul Feinbaum, who is covering SEC Media Days with ESPN. And there was a little bit of an exchange between Feinbaum and Saban, and I'm going to try and pull this up here for you because it is deeply fascinating how Nick Saban basically puts Paul Feinbaum in his place. And then, of course, like after the piece on air, the panel shuts up and Feinbaum and Saban kind of get into it a little bit. And then Nick Saban kind of storms off of the set. And it's one of those things that like I can't believe that I saw that happen. And I'll try and get the link up on the Facebook page for you as well, because it's just one of those things that I think just, quite frankly, everybody needs to see. Let's see if we can get it going here. There it is. Just listen to how this goes down.
Meet with the masses. You got to start the day. I know you've been going room to room, and I know that you did. Eventually, you were asked about Cam Robinson, but not everybody watching us has seen that. Where do you sit on Cam Robinson after his arrest in May?
Well, after looking at the case, we found out that there were a lot of circumstances around this case, as the prosecutor did in choosing not to charge these guys, that I can't really discuss here right now. But regardless of that circumstance, our stance on this is we want to do everything that we can to get these guys to change their behavior in terms of making better choices and decisions. And both guys have done a lot of things internally, whether it was police ride around, whether it was community service with, delinquent type behavior situations with young people, where they've been counselors. And if they continue to do these things in a positive way, I'm not sure that we'll make the decision at a later time as to whether they'll be suspended for the first game or not.
Coach, to a lot of people, that's a very bad look for your program, that you're working out internally but not suspending them publicly for an important game against Southern Cal. How do you answer those critics?
Well, I don't really care to answer the critics because I'm going to do what's right for the players. And if the players really did anything that wrong, they would have got charged with something. All right. So,
well, I mean, that's debatable if you listen to what the district attorney said. Because simply,
the district attorney didn't say what all was. Like, there were 4 people in the car. Why did the 2 football players get arrested and the other guys could not get arrested? All right. There's no law about concealed weapons in Louisiana. Is that right, Martin? You're from Louisiana. All right. So why did they search the car just because there was a gun on the seat?
You think they were persecuting football?
I don't. There's just a lot of questions there that are reasons that there weren't charges brought against these guys. Now, we're going to do now, do we condone the behavior? No. All right, but you're innocent until proven guilty in this country, regardless of whether you get convicted in the media or not, which is what you're doing to these players.
I'm not convicted yet. I'm just asking you why you were not going to suspend Cam Robinson for the
because I'm not going to convict him in the public. And you said that I was going to get criticized by you and the public and the media because I'm not going to suspend him. And I don't really care about that. It's the end of the conversation.
Fair enough. Other topic, quarterbacks. Everybody's eager to see now.
He said that's the end of the conversation. And you know what? It was the end of the conversation. Let me preface all of this by saying Nick Saban showed up to SEC Media Days looking like the president of the United States of America, literally being brought in with security and a full-on motorcade. So, Nick Saban is the president of the SEC, right? The SEC has the commissioner. Yes. His name is Greg Sankey, yada, yada, yada. The actual president of the SEC, is it not Nick Saban? Because I think that it is. Who else could go on ESPN with a full-on panelist of journalists and Paul Feinbaum, like not nobody. I mean, it's flipping Paul Feinbaum, and got to a point in the conversation that he didn't like. He said the conversation was over, and you know what? The conversation was over. Yeah, when you're Nick Saban, you get to do stuff like that. But it's interesting to me because I haven't seen people kill Nick Saban the same way they were killing Dan Mullen yesterday. And part of it is Dan Mullen's own fault. Dan Mullen passed the buck in a way that doesn't make any sense. Dan Mullen said that the decision to admit Jeffrey Simmons to the university was not a decision that he had anything to do with. No, I don't believe you. I'm sorry. There's just a level of skepticism that I have there that
I'm not having it.
No, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Whereas Nick Saban said, yeah, my decision not to suspend these guys. But again, the thing that irks me, and I do respect that the coming out and saying, you know what, this is my decision, and here's why. But let's not pretend over and over and over again, like we always seem to do, like this is somehow for the kids. Like, oh, this is for these two guys. They haven't been convicted of anything yet, so I'm not going to discipline them, even though the evidence is plain. Like the arrest that they received, they deserved. Now, I think I can agree with Nick Saban when I say it is kind of weird and it is kind of sketchy. There's 4 people in a car, only the 2 football players get arrested, but does that change the fact that there was marijuana in the car? That the arresting officer found 2 guns in the car? Is it illegal to conceal carry in Louisiana? Of course it isn't. But one of those guns was not registered to anybody. That's illegal. That's not legal. And allegedly, there are 4 people in the car, and that gun allegedly belonged to somebody in there. Right? There's a 50% chance that between the 2 Alabama football players and the 2 non-Alabama football players in that car, one of those people owns that gun. And if anything, you would suspend the guys for at least putting themselves in a position where an arresting officer could find you 2 guns and weed together in a car. That's just a bunch of boneheaded decisions leading up to it that deserve and are worthy of punishment of some kind. Real punishment, okay? Not like this internal stuff. Real, actual suspension. What makes people listen to you? Because players want to play. You take away that game time from them, that'll mean something. Okay? What you did was a slap on the wrist, if even that. And to prop it up and say, I did it because of them, I did it for them, that's quite frankly wrong. And if you say that I did it because I wanted to win, well, that's not going to play very well, but it's the truth. Especially Cam Robinson, because Cam Robinson is a monster. He is a beast. Does he give you a chance to beat USC? Of course he does. That's why you don't want to suspend him, but then just say that. Don't hide behind, I'm doing it for the players. You're doing it for you, man. You are doing it for you. And I understand there's a reason why he'll never say that. It just doesn't play well. Yeah, I think this guy gives us a great chance of winning. That's the reason why I haven't suspended him. Okay, and this isn't just Nick Saban, okay? This is Dan Mullen yesterday. This is Jimbo Fisher with Jameis Winston. There's a number of guys that could have been suspended for a number of reasons, and they're going to get away with slaps on the wrist because that's what's really important. But I think it's crazy that Nick Saban can do this. I honestly, who else but Nick Saban can get away with something like that? Like, there's a certain level of coach that you have to be. Like, basically, the best in whatever sport you coach for a person to allow you to do this. You see it all the time. The NBA, Greg Popovich is basically a jerk to whatever reporter has to ask him questions. And we only let Greg Popovich get away with stuff like that. Like Steve Kerr tried it a couple of times. I remember Steve Kerr ended up having to apologize to Doris Burke at one point. Like we're not going to let Steve Kerr get away with that. You have won one title with one team. Come back when you win multiple titles with different versions of your team. Go ahead and do that. Then we might let you get away with it. Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick can do it too. He can give you one-word answers, just be a jerk. He can tell you to shut up, and you're just okay with it. We just accept it from him. There's just a certain level that you reach where we just allow guys to be jerks. And let's call it what it is. Like, there is a level of surliness on a coach that is kind of cool to see. And then there's just being a jerk. Paul Feinbaum is a reporter asking you questions. That is his job. And yeah, the questions that he's asking you are uncomfortable for you. What, did you think that they were all going to be fun? Hey, Nick, what's your favorite color? Hey, Nick, what car do you like to drive? Hey, Nick, what's your favorite thing to do down in Alabama? No, they weren't going to all be that. Nick Saban would prefer that. Because real, actual football questions are great for him to answer. But real, actual life questions, the stuff with moral implications, yeah, nobody wants to stand around answering those. And the coaches that can get away with it and get away with not answering those questions do it every chance that they get. And Nick Saban has one way of doing it that almost no other coach has, which is flat out to tell you to stop asking questions. And he's done this stuff before. Nick Saban will just blow up and throw tantrums because he can. And because it scares people. And if you're in the room when it happens, it's not very fun. And it's so calculated and it's so planned. Nick Saban's like a pop star. Like when you see the top pop stars, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, those people, nothing that they do is an accident. Everything that they do is on purpose. Even if they get caught by the paparazzi, more than likely, it's on purpose. It's all planned in. Nick Saban will be smiling and joking with the media one day and then blow up the next week. Why? Because he's got to remind them of their place. That's all calculated. So that when it's time for Nick Saban to answer real hard questions like these, he doesn't have to answer them. He went into full parental mode. Okay? That's like a Draymond Green slap to the face, what he did to Paul Feinbaum. I mean, apart from just being incredibly rude and incredibly disrespectful to the man, whose only job is to just ask you questions about things that happened concerning your football team. And you just came off a national title. Your odds of winning it are 7-1, which is the best in your conference. He's going to ask you questions beyond football because we've seen the winning stuff already. How are you handling the moral stuff? A, not well. And B, the way you're handling the questions about the moral stuff seems to be even more telling. Right? Like, take Art Briles, for instance, in Baylor. Art Briles was trying to absolve himself of any guilt that he did not know what was happening at Baylor. And his answers told us more about him than his actual response to the situation, which allegedly he told victims not to say anything. And allegedly he was at best complacent on purpose. And Nick and Art Briles is around telling people stuff like, well, I think Baylor's trying to make me the scapegoat. I think Baylor is trying to hang me out to dry. Like somehow he didn't know what was happening with his own football players on his own football team, being one of the best football teams in the Big 12. Like there's no way. I'm not buying that for not even 1 second. And you're looking at Nick Saban, and the only thing more telling than his answer to the way he responded by not suspending Cam Robinson, the only thing more telling than that was the way he behaved answering Paul Feinbaum's questions. Paul Feinbaum is not known for being a bulldog. If you can just weather the storm of him asking you some uncomfortable questions, you probably get away from this one looking relatively clean. But I think the number of people who were just like, yeah, Paul Feinbaum and Nick Saban got testy today. Oh, that's it? That's not it. Paul Feinbaum and Nick Saban didn't just get testy. Nick Saban pushed Paul Feinbaum around. I was watching a movie the other day, Frost Nixon, about David Frost and his interviews with Richard Nixon. Basically the interview that broke Richard Nixon and got him to admit to the Watergate scandal. And just for the record, I am not comparing Nick Saban to Richard Nixon. So I don't want to hear that. Listen to where I'm going with this. There's a reporter at one point in the movie that basically says, I know all of the terrible things that Richard Nixon has done. I'm not going to shake his hand. I'm not going to do this, that, and the other. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. And then when Richard Nixon walks up to him and sticks out his hand, he shuts up and he shakes Richard Nixon's hand because that's the power of the man in the room. The most powerful man in the room at that moment was Richard Nixon. Everywhere Nick Saban goes, he's the most powerful man in the room. And you can say whatever you want to say. Like, I can stand here and say all of these things about Nick Saban. Nick Saban walks into this radio studio right now and sticks his hand out to me and says, I'm Nick Saban. How you doing? My hand is going up and out, and I'm shaking his hand. You probably just do whatever Nick Saban tells you to do because you're just in awe of the guy. But that doesn't mean you don't get to hold his feet to the fire. That doesn't mean you don't get to take him to task on this, a situation in which he is clearly wrong, right? Like, I don't think that that's even up for debate. Like, Nick Saban is very, very wrong here. Those guys should be suspended for at least a game. If you're saying nothing is proven, but you know they were involved in something sketchy, and the evidence of that sketchiness is out for the world to see, doesn't that deserve a one-game suspension? And I don't want to hear about the athletic or the assistant DA's opinion. I don't want to hear about the DA's opinion. We actually talked about this before I went on vacation. The DA basically let those guys off because they played football. He didn't want them to miss football because he thinks it builds character, and he doesn't think there's anything to gain from playing football, anything to gain from stopping these guys from playing football. So, I mean, I don't even trust what the DA's opinion on this is. I want actual criminal analysis of what happened here. And I want the coach to look at it and go, okay, regardless of what the evidence says, this doesn't look good. This isn't convicting a person in court. You are a head coach of a football team, not a court of law. You don't have to follow the due diligence. What you think the punishment for being in that situation is, that's what it should be. Because what you're essentially saying is, I don't really care if you are somehow in a position in a car filled with weed and guns, if there's enough evidence to obscure the fact that the guns and the weed are yours, and if there's enough of a star power factor with you, because Cam Robinson, 5-star defensive tackle, if there's enough of that with you, then guess what? You can get off the hook here. I mean, that's what you're essentially saying. You know, if I do something and I'm not convicted, but I make the company that I work for look bad, guess what? I can get fired. And that's not a person convicting me in the court of public opinion as opposed to the court of law. That is my boss deciding this is not a good look. Catch you later. I can be suspended. I can be suspended without pay. There are so many different ways that this has happened to people before. The fact that you would not expect that of a collegiate athlete who you are not paying and who you are mentoring and who, as Dan Mullen said yesterday, you are a father figure to, I find highly, highly, highly bizarre that you get to just do that and we're cool with it. And then when people try and ask you questions about it, we got to be cool with that too when you basically tell an entire panel of ESPN media members to shut up. And why do we have to be cool with it? Because apparently they were. Dad sat down at the table and told everybody to stop talking, and everybody stopped talking. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. That's me. Thank you for joining me today, giving me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate you. One thing that I do find deeply, deeply interesting is the way in which neutral venues have been changing the excitement level of sports, right? And I'm looking at Tennessee, because Tennessee has finally embraced the fact that, yes, we're a good team. That whole, aw, shucks act is not going to work anymore. Own the fact that you're good and win the games that people expect you to win. Because that's really what Tennessee's problem was last year. It wasn't that they weren't good. It was that the games that they should have won, they didn't win, especially the Florida game. That one, I don't even know what to tell you there. Like, I'm still in awe of how Butch Jones managed to make that game fall to pieces. But the actual arena in which you are playing is affecting the excitement level of some of these games. I'm actually very excited about the Virginia Tech Tennessee game at Bristol in a way that I would not otherwise be excited. Like, I understand that Tennessee, Virginia Tech, that's not to me, the biggest draw game that you're going to be able to find that Saturday, right? Like, that's just not. I don't know what to tell you there. It's just not. But playing the game in Bristol, I have so many questions because that is such a large place to play. I don't know how the depth perception gets involved in this, because we see it all the time in those basketball arenas that suddenly in March Madness, a lot of those basketball teams are playing in basketball arenas and suddenly find themselves playing in football arenas, and the depth perception totally messes with the shooters. Does that mess with the quarterbacks in the same way? I mean, I have all of these questions. I mean, maybe it won't mess with Josh Dobbs in that same way because he's not out here throwing the ball all that far. But you know what I mean. Does it mess with the game? Does it change the game in any way? I'm really curious to find out. And one of my big things that I'm going to do somehow before the season starts is to try and find a way to track down the owner of Bristol Motor Speedway and ask him all of my questions. So I'm trying to get that either this week or next week. Thank you for listening to Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. We'll continue with more SEC Media Days coverage. And, of course, make sure to check out British Open tomorrow morning.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sugar Tuesday is an exciting prospect at Shooters Supply and Range in Hixson. Hold your breath and squeeze. Shooters waives the membership